At 09:23 hours on June 14, 2025, the USS Princeton was conducting another routine freedom of navigation patrol in the South China Sea when her spy radar something that would nearly start World War III. A Chinese-type O-52D destroyer, veering at 200 kilometers just as she suddenly accelerated from 18 to 90 seconds. Unknown to the Americans, the Jianxiang's captain had just received orders from Beijing: intercept the Americans and make them blink first. But Beijing was about to learn launching the U.S. Navy in open water remains a spectacularly stupid idea. The Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, you see here, had been doing what American sailors have done best for 75, keeping the world's most important sea lanes open so Chinese factories could sell their cheap electronics to Best Buy. They were 180 nautical miles Chinese territory in international waters, where $3.4 trillion in annual trade flows like clockwork. The strike group's mission was textbook freedom of navigation.
At 0817 hours, in the gray silence of the Western Pacific, a Chinese warship made a decision that could have changed the balance of power in less than 15 minutes. Its captain believed he was about to intimidate a lone American destroyer. What he didn't understand was that he was sailing straight into a floating fortress designed for one purpose: to win. The USS Mustin was conducting a routine freedom of navigation transit through international waters, the kind of operation the US Navy has performed for decades without drama. Calm seas, predictable course, radar rotating in steady rhythm. Nothing unusual until the SPY-1D radar painted a contact accelerating fast from the north. A Chinese Type 055 cruiser, one of Beijing's most advanced surface combatants, had been shadowing at a comfortable distance. Then suddenly, its engines roared to flank speed. In under 2 minutes, the cruiser jumped from 16 knots to nearly 32. Its new vector was aggressive, cutting directly across the Mustin's bow at a dangerously close angle. This wasn't routine shadowing anymore. This was a calculated challenge. Inside the Mustin's Combat Information Center, there was no panic, only quiet efficiency. The tactical action officer watched the Chinese ship's course line update in real time. Distance, 41 nautical miles and closing. Time to potential intercept, 11 minutes. Threat level adjusted from monitor to elevated. The Chinese cruiser carried 112 vertical launch cells loaded with YJ-18 anti-ship missiles capable of supersonic terminal sprint. On paper, it looked impressive. In propaganda videos, it looked unstoppable. But paper calculations rarely survive contact with reality, because what the Chinese captain could not see was the invisible network surrounding the American destroyer. The Mustin was not alone. Through cooperative engagement capability and Link 16 data links, she was connected to a much larger picture. An E-2D Hawkeye orbiting 24,000 feet above the horizon was watching everything. A Virginia-class submarine, silent and undetectable, patrolled somewhere beneath the surface. And over 150 nautical miles away, an American carrier strike group adjusted its posture without changing course. At 0821, the Chinese cruiser activated fire control radar. The signal spike was unmistakable. It was the electronic equivalent of cocking a loaded weapon. The Mustin's response was calm and almost surgical. General quarters was not called. Instead, the ship shifted into a higher defensive posture known only to the crew. Missile systems warmed quietly. The Aegis combat system began calculating firing solutions, automatically refreshing every few seconds. The American destroyer's SM-6 missiles, with ranges exceeding 240 nautical miles in surface mode, could strike long before the Chinese ship ever reached its preferred engagement envelope. The numbers were brutally simple. If the Chinese cruiser launched first, its missiles would need approximately 6 minutes to close the distance. The Mustin's intercept window? Less than half that. And that didn't account for electronic warfare. At 0824, the sky changed. 2 FA-18 Super Hornets appeared on radar, approaching at high subsonic speed from the east. They had launched minutes earlier from a carrier well beyond visual range. Their APG-79 ASA radars locked onto the Chinese cruiser long before the cruiser's systems detected them. In the electromagnetic spectrum, stealth isn't just about shape, it's about who sees first. The Chinese vessel continued closing, 27 nautical miles now. On its bridge, Orders were likely being shouted: show resolve, demonstrate dominance, force the Americans to turn away. But American ships do not turn away in international waters. At 0827, the Mustin altered course not to retreat, but to place herself in a tactically superior firing position. The move was subtle, barely noticeable to outside observers, yet it shifted engagement geometry in her favor. The Chinese cruiser now faced overlapping threat rings from air and sea. Then came the electronic punch. An EA-18G Growler entered jamming range. Within seconds, Chinese radar displays began showing phantom contacts. One American destroyer became 3. 2 aircraft became 8. Targeting locks flickered and dropped. Communications bandwidth narrowed under pressure. Electronic warfare is invisible to the public. There are no explosions, no dramatic visuals, but inside a warship's combat system, it feels like blindness spreading across the screen. At 0830, the Chinese cruiser made its boldest move yet. It cut sharply across the Mustin's projected path at less than 5 nautical miles, dangerously close for vessels of that size. The message was clear: back down. The American response was even clearer. The Mustin increased speed and maintained course. No evasive turn, no hesitation, just raw confidence backed by decades of blue water dominance. Meanwhile, sonar operators aboard the American destroyer detected something else. A distant but distinct acoustic signature. A diesel-electric submarine, likely a Type 039, attempting to position itself for intimidation. But it was running louder than expected. Cavitation noise carried through the water like a warning flare. The Virginia-class submarine listening nearby had already classified it, tracked it, and quietly moved into a shadowing position. China had attempted a coordinated show of force: surface ship, aircraft on standby, submarine presence. It looked powerful from a distance. But coordination without superiority is just theater. At 0834, the tactical picture was no longer ambiguous. Every Chinese movement was tracked, every emission catalogued, every potential firing solution calculated down to the second. The Mustin's captain finally spoke inside the combat center. Maintain course, 3 words, no drama, no anger, just certainty. Because the difference between provocation and dominance is preparation. The US Navy had been refining integrated multi-domain warfare for over a century. Carrier aviation, missile defense, submarine warfare, electronic attack, all synchronized in ways few navies on Earth can replicate. At 0837, something changed on the Chinese cruiser. Its speed dropped from 30 knots to 18. Fire control radar deactivated. The aggressive vector softened into parallel shadowing once again. The challenge was over. No missiles launched, no shots fired. But the message had been delivered with crystal clarity. When China challenged a US Navy ship in open water, it discovered a hard truth. Power is not measured by how close you sail. It's measured by who controls the battle space before the first shot has ever fired. And on that gray morning in the Pacific, control never once slipped from American hands.